A single mom is pulled over for no reason. Then cops drag her out in front of her son. She's calm, respectful, but they treat her like a criminal. Her groceries spill. Her child watches in fear. But then, the boy makes one phone call, and the mayor himself shows up. What happens next shocks everyone. The sound of sirens sliced through the quiet afternoon. Tasha had just picked up her 8-year-old son, Malik, from school. She had one hand on the wheel and the other gently steadying the paper grocery bags in the passenger seat. They were filled with the basics: cereal, apples, some sandwich bread, and one special treat, a bottle of chocolate milk just for Malik. He was buckled in the back seat, swinging his legs and humming softly to a cartoon theme song still stuck in his head. It was just another normal Wednesday. School, groceries, home. Until flashing red and blue lights flooded the rearview mirror like a sudden storm. Tasha's heart skipped. Her hands tightened on the wheel. She hadn't been speeding. No taillights out, no rolling stops. What could this be? She glanced at Malik through the mirror. He noticed the lights, too. His little voice piped up, "Mommy, are we in trouble?" "No, baby," she said, forcing a calm tone. "Everything's fine. Just a routine stop." Tasha pulled over smoothly, turned off the engine, and lowered the window halfway. She kept both hands visible on the steering wheel, like her father, a retired Army sergeant, had taught her. Stay calm, stay respectful, stay safe. The officer approached. A tall white man, mid-40s, his face unreadable behind dark sunglasses. But Tasha saw his hand. It wasn't on a notepad. It wasn't even on his belt. It was resting right on his holstered gun. "License and registration," he demanded, his tone flat but firm. "Of course, officer," Tasha said, her voice even, polite. She reached slowly into her glove compartment, retrieved her registration, then handed both documents through the window. "Can you please tell me what this is about?" The officer didn't respond. He looked over her ID. His eyes lingered on her address. Then, without another word, he stepped back and made a motion toward his shoulder mic. A few garbled words came through, but Tasha caught just one chilling phrase. "Requesting backup." Tasha blinked. "Backup?" she whispered to herself. She looked back at Malik, who had gone quiet. He clutched his backpack against his chest, now sensing the change in the air. Within minutes, 2 more squad cars arrived, lights flashing. Doors slammed. Officers emerged, hands on their belts, eyes scanning the scene like they were preparing for a raid. Tasha's pulse raced. Her breaths grew shallow. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle," one of them ordered. "Wait, can you please explain what I've done wrong?" she asked, still inside the car, still calm but confused. "I have my son with me. I just picked him up from school." "Out of the car. Now," the officer repeated, his voice rising. Malik's small voice cracked the tension. "Mommy," Tasha turned to him quickly. "It's okay, baby. Just stay in your seat. Don't move." As she opened the door slowly and stepped out, the first officer grabbed her arm. She stumbled slightly but kept her balance. "I haven't done anything," she said, trying to remain steady. "I'm cooperating." But the officers didn't seem to care. They pushed her toward the front of the car. Her groceries tumbled from the seat and onto the pavement. Milk splashed and rolled, apples bounced and scattered, a loaf of bread landed in a puddle. Malik gasped from inside. Then, without warning, they twisted her arms behind her back and slapped on handcuffs. Right there. On the side of the road. In broad daylight. In front of her son. Tasha didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just looked up at the sky and whispered, "Stay calm. Stay respectful. Stay safe." But inside, she was breaking. Tasha had barely turned off the ignition when a second and third patrol cars skidded to a stop behind her. Sirens wailed for another second, then cut off sharply, leaving an eerie silence. Doors flew open. 2 more white officers jumped out, hands already on weapons, eyes locked on Tasha as if she were a fugitive. One of them, tall, buzz-cut, chest puffed with authority, marched toward her and barked, "Step out of the vehicle now!" Tasha, who had remained calm through the first officer's demands, tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She was terrified, but she knew what she had to do. She inhaled deeply, steadied her voice, and said clearly, "Can you please tell me why I'm being stopped?" The officer didn't respond. Instead, he reached for her door, yanked it open, and before she could react, grabbed her arm hard. "Hey, stop! That's my mom!" cried Malik from the back seat, his voice shrill with panic. Tasha tried to turn to comfort him, but the officer pulled her out forcefully. Her arm twisted, her knee scraped the pavement, and her purse spilled from her lap, sending receipts and a half-eaten granola bar tumbling to the ground. Crash. One of the paper grocery bags tipped over. A bottle of chocolate milk rolled into the gutter. Apples bounced across the sidewalk. Bread crushed underfoot. The simple dinner she had planned now lay scattered, forgotten in the chaos. The officer bent her over the hood of her own car. She could feel the cold metal press into her chest. "I haven't done anything," she cried out. Her voice shook now. "Please, my son is in the car. Don't scare him." But they didn't listen. With mechanical coldness, one officer cuffed, her hands behind her back as the others watched, like she was a threat, like she was less than human. Malik, still strapped in the back seat, could only watch in horror. His small hands trembled violently. He clutched his tablet to his chest like a shield, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mommy!" he sobbed. "Don't hurt my mommy!" Inside, something shattered in Tasha, not just from the pain in her wrists, or the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in front of strangers. It was the look on Malik's face, his innocent eyes flooded with confusion and fear. He had never seen his mother cry before. She bit down on her lip hard. She had to stay strong. For him. One of the officers muttered something about suspicious activity in the area and a matching vehicle, but it didn't make sense. They hadn't asked her a single real question, hadn't checked anything, just grabbed her. Tasha lifted her head as best she could from her awkward position. "You're scaring my child," she said through clenched teeth. "Please, at least let me speak to him." "Ma'am, be quiet," the officer snapped. Across the hood of the car, she could see her groceries scattered like debris after a storm. People were starting to gather, neighbors, pedestrians, a teenager pulling out a phone to record. But no one stepped in. And Malik? He was still frozen. His eyes darted around, desperate for someone to help. His lips moved silently, whispering something to himself. Then his eyes fell on something, his mother's phone. It had slid to the floor of the front seat. Her screen was unlocked. He stared at it, then at the officers, then at his mom, and that's when something shifted inside. Him. He didn't fully understand why they were hurting his mom, but he remembered something she once told him. "If something ever goes wrong, call Uncle Darius. He'll help. He's important." Malik wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, leaned forward, and tapped the screen with trembling fingers. The officer outside didn't notice. He was too busy arguing with the others about procedure. Malik scrolled past contacts, grandma, school, dentist, then Uncle Darius, mayor. He tapped the name. The phone rang once, twice. Click. A deep voice answered. "Hello?" Malik's voice was soft at first, like a whisper. "Uncle Darius, they hurt Mommy. The police. They took her out the car. They're being mean. She didn't do anything." There was a pause on the line. Then the voice replied, "Where are you, Malik? Tell me everything." Malik peeked out the window and gave the name of the street. "We're by the bus stop, near the bakery. I'm in the back seat. Mommy's crying." "Stay in the car. Lock the door." "I'm on my way," said the voice, calm but powerful. Malik hung up, breathing hard. He looked back out the window. The officers were still ignoring him. But what they didn't know was that help was coming. And not just any help. The mayor was on his way. As the officers argued among themselves, their voices a harsh, grating clash of accusations and excuses, Malik sat frozen in the back seat of the car. His small hands trembled. As he watched the men pull his mom out, their faces cold and hard, eyes filled with suspicion and something darker, disdain. They kept muttering something about suspicious activity, as if that was enough reason to justify their roughness. Malik's chest tightened with fear. His mom was the kindest person he knew, always careful, always smiling, but now she was being treated like a criminal. He glanced down at his mom's phone resting on the seat beside him. Normally, he wasn't allowed to touch it. She always said it was private, just for emergencies and work. But today, the urgency clawed at his heart. He needed to do something. Anything. With a deep breath, Malik picked up the phone, his small fingers swiping to unlock it. The screen lit up, and Malik's eyes quickly scanned the contacts list. Then he found it. Uncle Darius, Mayor. His heart pounded like a drum in his ears as he tapped the number. His fingers felt too big and clumsy on the screen, but he didn't hesitate. The phone rang twice. Malik's breath hitched. "Hello?" came a deep, steady voice on the other end. Malik couldn't hold back the tears anymore. His sobs spilled out uncontrollably. "Uncle Darius, they're hurting Mommy. They pulled her out of the car, and I'm scared." For a moment, there was silence. The only sound was Malik's shaky breathing. "Where are you right now?" Uncle Darius's voice was calm but fierce, like a shield ready to protect. Malik sniffled and gave the street name, his voice cracking with panic. "Stay in the car," Uncle Darius said firmly. "I'm on my way, and so are some friends." Malik gripped the phone tighter as he watched the officers continue their heated discussion. They hadn't noticed the call. The tension in the air felt suffocating, like a heavy storm about to break. The seconds stretched endlessly. Malik's mind raced. What if Uncle Darius didn't come fast enough? What if they hurt his mom more? Then through the car window he saw flashing lights approaching from down the street. Not police, but sleek black SUVs with tinted windows. His heart lifted a little. A tall man stepped out from one of the vehicles, sharp suit, calm eyes. Malik recognized him immediately. One of Uncle Darius's trusted aides. The aide's eyes locked on Malik's car and then on the officers. The officers' voices faltered for a moment. The sudden arrival changed everything. Malik's mom looked shaken but alive, her hands trembling as she tried to steady herself. When the aide opened the back door, Malik climbed out and ran to her side. "It's okay, Mommy," he whispered. "Uncle Darius is here." One of the officers took a step back, glancing nervously at the approaching SUVs. "We were just—" "You had no right," the aide said coldly, voice carrying authority that made even the officers shrink back. "This family is under my protection now. Stand down." Malik's mom looked at Malik, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, baby," she said softly, pulling him close. Malik could feel the weight of the moment. The power behind Uncle Darius was more than just a name on a phone. It was a force that could stop injustice in its tracks. The officers, now silent and uneasy, watched as Malik, his mom, and the aide climbed into one of the SUVs. The convoy moved quickly, lights flashing past, leaving the tense scene behind. Malik held his mom's hand tightly, relief washing over him. For the first time that day, he felt safe, and he knew that as long as Uncle Darius was on their side, they had someone powerful watching over them. A deep rumbling engine broke the stillness. A sleek black SUV glided to a halt at the curb, followed, closely by two more vehicles with heavily tinted windows. The sun bounced off their polished surfaces like a warning flare. Power had arrived. The door of the first SUV opened with calm precision. Out stepped Mayor Darius Ford. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved like a man who knew his presence could silence a room. Clad in a tailored gray suit, he adjusted his cufflinks with the kind of measured composure that screamed authority. Behind him came two city attorneys, each holding leather portfolios, flanked by the police chief, a wiry man with eyes darting nervously, and a cameraman from the local news already filming. The cluster of officers who had earlier surrounded Tasha and her young son, Malik, froze in place. The officer who had shouted the loudest now looked pale. His hand twitched at his belt. Sweat traced a line down his temple. One of them stammered, "Mr. Mayor, we didn't know—" Mayor Ford's gaze didn't soften. His voice was ice. "Wrapped in fire. Didn't know what?" he interrupted. "That you assaulted a mother in front of her son? That you humiliated a citizen for doing nothing but driving while black?" His words echoed louder than any siren, cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. Passers-by had begun to gather, phones out, recording. The air pulsed with the weight of a reckoning. He didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he walked. No, strode, past the trembling officers and knelt down before Malik. The boy, barely 10, had tears in his eyes, but stood upright, holding his mother's hand with quiet defiance. Ford looked him in the eye, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, champ. The boy blinked. Ford gave him a nod of assurance that said, you matter. That said, I see you. Then he turned to Tasha. Her hands still trembled. Her blouse was wrinkled from where she had been manhandled. She looked exhausted, not just from this moment, but from a lifetime of knowing it could happen at any time. To anyone who looked like her. The mayor's face changed. The stern command melted into something raw. Real. I'm so sorry, Tosh. This ends today. She nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. Her voice cracked. It's always the same. We scream and no one listens. Ford shook his head. Not today. Today the city listens. Behind him, the attorneys stepped forward. One held out a file. Effective immediately, the mayor announced, raising his voice so everyone, especially the officers, could hear. Every officer involved in this incident is suspended pending investigation, the crowd murmured. Some gasped. A few cheered. And, Ford continued, all body cam footage will be reviewed and made public. No more protecting the few bad apples. We owe our citizens better. We owe you better. The officer who had led the stop, a burly man, with a crew cut, stepped forward, his face a mask of denial. This is a misunderstanding. She resisted, Ford raised a hand, shutting him down. Don't. Not another word. You don't get to spin this anymore. Then he turned to the cameraman. I want every second of this aired tonight. The people deserve to see the truth, and they'll get it. Tasha stood straighter now. Her grip on Malik's hand tightened, not in fear, but in strength. Her son looked up at her like she was a warrior, and in that moment, she was. The mayor stepped closer, his voice now quieter just for her. I promise you, there will be accountability. There will be change. You have my word. Tasha swallowed hard, then whispered, Thank you. Ford turned and faced the cameras. His final words thundered through the lenses and into the hearts of anyone watching. Let today mark the end of silence. Let it mark the beginning of justice. And for the first time in a long time, the street didn't feel so cold. It felt like hope. Footage released by the mayor's office swept across social media like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and every major news network. Clips showed the officers cornering Tasha, her voice calm but firm, Malik standing frozen beside her. Then came the moment the mayor arrived, walked past the badges and bulletproof vests, and knelt beside a child who had simply wanted his mother to be treated like a human being. News anchors called it another case of racial profiling, but, this time with a twist, accountability followed swiftly. By the next morning, over 4.2 million people had watched the video. Hashtags like Not a Justice for Tasha, a Little Malik, and Ford for the People trended globally. Celebrities tweeted support. Activists praised the mayor's actions. Mothers across the country posted their own stories, creating a digital quilt of resilience, heartbreak, and unity. The 3 officers involved were officially suspended within 24 hours pending a full investigation. Public pressure mounted. Protesters gathered peacefully outside the precinct, holding signs that read, Dignity is not a threat. Would you treat her like this if she was your mother? And, Malik, we stand with you. Under this tidal wave of scrutiny, the police chief stepped in front of reporters with shaking hands and a rehearsed apology. He announced an overhaul of department policies, mandatory body cam use, and new cultural sensitivity training. But for many it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Then came the press conference, the moment that cemented this story not just in headlines, but in hearts. Mayor Darius Ford stood at the city courthouse podium with Tasha on one side and Malik on the other. The sun was setting behind them, casting a golden halo around the trio. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed, and a crowd of hundreds stood silent, waiting. The mayor looked directly into the cameras, his tone slow and steady, not just for the room, but for everyone watching at home. Every citizen deserves respect, he began, regardless of their skin color, income, or address. Tasha is not just a mother. She is a neighbor. She is a teacher. She is part of the soul of this city. He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. And no child, he paused, voice tightening just a fraction, should have to witness what Malik did. Ever. A wave of emotion moved through the crowd. Some wiped tears. Others held their breath. Then it was Tasha's turn. She stepped forward, gripping the sides of the podium. Malik held her hand, and for a moment mother and son stood, alone at the front. No security, no barrier, just courage in its purest form. Her voice was soft, but it didn't waver. That day, I stayed calm because I wanted to show my son that dignity matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And I'm grateful, she added, her voice trembling now, that he remembered who to call, and that someone powerful cared enough to come. The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't loud and thunderous. It was steady, heartfelt, the kind of applause that came from people who understood what it meant to be seen at long last. As they left the stage, Malik looked out at the people, then up at his mother. "Are they clapping for us?" Tasha smiled. "They're clapping because you were brave." That night, the story continued to ripple. Schools held assemblies about dignity and justice. City officials met with community leaders to begin meaningful reform. A mural went up on the side of a downtown building. It showed Malik, holding a phone in one hand and his mother's hand in the other. Above them, painted in bold letters, he called. The city answered. And in neighborhoods that had grown tired of promises, tired of pain, something unexpected stirred. Hope. Because that little boy, who once thought he was powerless, reminded an entire city of what justice could look like when people refused to stay silent.